Chapter 2 of Dangerous Journey, The Interpreter's House. I saw then in my dream that ahead of Christian, on a grassy bank, lay 3 men fast asleep, with fetters on their heels. They were called Simple, Sloth, and Presumption. Christian knew that to sleep on this particular road was like sleeping in the rigging of a ship when a storm was brewing. "Wake up," he cried, "and I will help you off with your irons." But they only opened one eye at him and yawned.
"I see no danger," said Simple. "I want to go on sleeping," said Sloth. "Every tub must stand on its own bottom," said Presumption.
Then they all 3 rolled over and went to sleep again.
No, I didn't.
Diane.
So Christian proceeded on his way, troubled to think that men in such danger should so little esteem his kindness in waking them. And we are now to learn how wise it was of Christian to warn them, for as he drew near the narrow wicket gate, he saw that it was firmly closed. And even as he reached it, he felt the wind of an arrow swish past his ear and bury itself in the woodwork. Looking round in terror, he now saw on the opposite hill a strong castle with a host of dark, menacing figures on the battlements. Christian didn't dally. Over the gate was written, "Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." He knocked with all his might. A second arrow narrowly missed him. "Who's there?" asked a voice. "A poor burdened traveler. I come from the city of destruction, and I'm going to the celestial city." To his relief, the gate was quickly opened, and a hand pulled him in. Then Christian asked for the guardian of the gate, whose name was Goodwill. "What mean these arrows?" To which he answered, "Yonder castle belongs to Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. Both he and his soldiers will shoot their darts at anyone who tries to enter here. They aim to kill you before they can reach safety. You're fortunate to be alive." "I tremble and rejoice," said Christian. "Why do you come alone?" asked Goodwill. "Because none of my neighbors and none whom I encountered on the road saw the danger." "Did none of them follow you?" "Pliable came with me a little way until we fell both together into the Slough of Despond," Christian answered. And he was discouraged and would not adventure further. "Alas, poor man, is he not worth running a few risks when the heavenly city is your destination?" Goodwill asked. "But I'm not one to talk," replied Christian. "I also nearly turned aside, persuaded by the arguments of Mr. Worldly Wiseman. And I don't know what would have become of me had not Evangelist met me again, when I was musing in the midst of my dumps. And truth to tell, I'm still much inconvenienced by this burden that is upon my back." Then I saw in my dream that Christian asked him if he could not help him off with his burden. "However hard I try," said Christian, "I don't seem able to move it." "No man can get it off you," said Goodwill. "But keep to the straight and narrow path, and it will lead you to the place of deliverance." So Christian began to gird his loins and to address himself on his journey. "How far will it be?" he asked himself as he plodded on his way. His next stop was the house of the interpreter, who Goodwill had told him could give him useful lessons for his journey. It was a large and mysterious house, such as one visits in dreams. Its master, in answer to his knock, asked him what he wanted. "Sir," said Christian, "I am a man that is going to Mount Zion, and I was told that if I called here, you would show me excellent things which would help me."
"Come in,"
said the interpreter. First he led him into a parlor, which was full of dust because it was never swept. So the interpreter called for a serving maid to sweep it. But the dust began to fly, and Christian began to choke. Never had there been such dust. He groped around blindly. Then he heard the interpreter tell the maid,
"Bring hither water and sprinkle the room."
All at once the dust had cleared, and the maid was sweeping it up with pleasure.
"This parlor," said the interpreter, "is the soul of man clogged with the dust of sin, but see how easily by God's grace it can be cleansed."
saw in my dream that the interpreter took Christian by the hand again and led him to a very dark room, where there sat a man in an iron cage. Now the man seemed very sad, and sat with his eyes looking down to the ground and his hands folded together, and he sighed as if his heart would break. Then said Christian, "Who is this?"
"Talk with him and see," said the interpreter.
"What used you to be?" asked Christian.
"I once was a flourishing professor, both in my own eyes and also in the eyes of others," answered the man. "I was on my way, as I thought, to the celestial city, and I was confident that I would get there."
"But what did you do to bring yourself to this condition?" Christian asked.
"I failed to keep watch," the man replied. "I followed the pleasures of this world, which promised me all manner of delights, but they proved to be an empty bubble. And now I am shut up in this iron cage, a man of despair who can't get out."
No further explanations were given. No one said who put him there, but the interpreter whispered to Christian, "Bear well in mind what you have seen." Finally, Christian was led to a gateway like the one which he had lately entered. Beside it sat a man at a table with a book and an inkhorn before him to take the name of anyone who wished to pass through. But the gate was guarded by fierce men in armor, ready to do hurt and mischief though they could do to any traveler. And there stood a great company of people desirous of going in. They didn't dare. Then, as there was seen upon the stage, Christian saw a valiant man approach. "Set down my name, sir," he said. That done, he drew his sword and rushed upon the armed men, who laid upon him with deadly force. But the man, not at all discouraged, fell to cutting and hacking most resolutely. So after he had received and given many wounds, he cut his way to safety. "I think I know the lesson of this," said Christian triumphantly as he resumed his journey. "My safety will not depend, it seems, not on cleverness, but on simple courage." How his burden had got on his back in the first place, and why no one else had burdens, as happened in dreams, we are not told, but never had he been so eager as he was now to be rid of it, and that, he did but know it, was half the battle. Now I saw in my dream that the road from then on was fenced on either side with a wall. The wall was named Salvation. Along this road did burdened Christian run, or should we say he did his best to run so far as he could with that load upon his back. At the foot of the hill he passed an open tomb. Then up again on a little knoll he found himself beneath a wayside cross, and as its shadow fell across him, so suddenly the burden, slipping from his shoulders, fell from off his back. It tumbled down the hill, it tumbled into the mouth of the tomb. It was never seen again. Christian kept feeling behind his back. He couldn't believe it, for it was very surprising to him that the simple act of gazing at the cross had set him free, and his burden of guilt was gone. He stood there in amazement. Behold, 3 shining ones appeared. The first one said, "Your soul is now swept clean of sin." The second stripped him of his mud-stained rags and gave him bright new clothes. The third one handed him a parchment.
"Guard it carefully," he said, "and surrender it only when you have reached the gate of the celestial city."
Great dangers lay ahead of him, but for the moment he was light as air. So Christian gave 3 leaps for joy and went on singing. "Who would true valor see, let him come hither. One here will constant be, come wind, come weather. There's no discouragement shall make him once relent his first avowed intent to be a pilgrim." And that is the end of chapter 2.